Welcome to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. Coming to you from WOUB Radio, Studio B in beautiful Athens, Ohio. I'm Jay Warmke.
And I'm Annie Warmke, at least today.
You are absolutely Annie, the one and only Annie Warmke. And today we're going to talk about the problems inherent with lithium batteries, or we can coup whoever we want, deal with it.
Okay,
Now,
that is
what does that mean? Okay, 2019, there was a military coup in Bolivia, largely over who controlled the lithium within that country. Bolivia has huge reserves of lithium.
And
so
let me ask, were we behind this coup?
Well,
some corporation was behind the coup.
The person who is said we can coup whoever we want, deal with it, happened to do that on Twitter, and he happens to own Twitter.
Word, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. He basically said, hey, I want the lithium. We can coup whoever we want, deal with it.
So he bought Bolivia.
Well, actually, what happened, because it was a socialist president, I forget the guy's name. Let's see. I wrote it down here.
Is he related to Pinochet?
No. It was Morales. Morales. Remember the indigenous
yes, I
president?
Do.
And
so they
anyway, so
off.
As soon as the military, because he was winning the election, the people decided, who were sort of in the military, said, oh, the election's rigged because you're winning, so we're gonna take over. And then the Trump administration,
it could have been the Bush,
jumped all over it and said, yeah, this is good. And then Elon Musk and all that. All right, so it's the right wings kicking out the left wings over lithium. So what is lithium? Lithium, Annie asked me to explain.
I was going to say, you're asking the question to yourself, and then you're answering. But let me just back up for a minute, because the reality of everything that we're going to talk about today strikes me as crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
Crazy. Just really crazy.
Well, that's pretty much every week. So, so anyway, lithium is a mineral. Obviously, it's a salt primarily. But what we've seen in recent years is lithium is becoming more and more important. In fact, a lot of people say or project that lithium is the next oil. And of course, oil helped out a lot in the Industrial Revolution, but it had its own set of problems.
Yeah, well, how does this impact mentally ill people that need to take lithium?
That's a small little bit of the market.
That's just like some of the stuff they're doing now, where they're using it for other things, and then there's not enough for the people that need it.
Well, your mineral extraction, this is one of those concepts where we know that there is a finite amount of everything, of every mineral, but what they found over time is it's almost an infinite finite amount. You find more and more and more when you look for it. Yeah, it is, but the world's a big place. And so I'll get into where we're finding more lithium. But the thing is not that we're going to run out of lithium. That's not the thing immediately. Now, obviously, in 100 years or whatever, that's going to be a thing.
You're so German today.
So anyway, I'm waving my hands around.
Yeah. So where are we now?
Okay,
where are we starting?
Where are we now?
This?
Okay.
Yes.
So the lithium is primarily being used in batteries, right? We're moving
batteries for cars and everything.
Yes. Well, your cell phone, your electronics, every electronic device,
batteries and everything.
Yeah, and they're primarily
even
shifting over to lithium.
You put in your headlight, your headlamp. That's
a lot of them are. We're moving there. And the reason we're moving there is because the price of lithium has become more and more affordable compared to all of the alternatives. Before, we always used lead acid batteries. Lead acid batteries were the ones that you're used to in your daddy's car, where it had little sulfur deposits on the terminals, and it was big and it was heavy.
Well, just the term lead, that sounds scary. And the extraction of lead.
Well, it's lead. It's lead and sulfuric acid.
Yeah. Oh.
So anyway, so we're moving from that because the batteries are much, much lighter, much more energy dense when you're dealing with lithium. And that's why cell phones, if you had to have a lead acid battery in your cell phone, you'd be carrying around a 5-pound brick.
Yeah, but what does dense mean?
Energy dense just means you get more power for the size and the weight of something. So,
so
it's just like gold is heavier than feathers. You know, you can get the same amount of weight.
Comparison.
Yeah, but in the smaller volume, it's much more dense.
Yeah.
And this is much more energy dense. And that's one of the advantages of lithium. And lithium has a lot of advantages, but it has disadvantages as well. So what I'm hoping to get to is that what are the issues around lithium? Because we are in a transition right now, whether you realize it or not. Our economy is shifting away from oil and moving towards lithium in a lot of respects.
That's the reason I keep asking you to define your terms, because I would love for people to listen to where these things are going, because the true cost of it seems to me is pretty awful.
Right.
Well, and to the environment and to people in general.
All right. Well, let me hit some of these true cost environment things, or what are some of the issues. Basically, at the moment, lithium is typically mined in one of two ways. One way is traditional mining. You dig a big hole in the ground and you dig it out. And that's the way it's mined primarily in Australia. Australia right now accounts for about 51% of the world's lithium that is produced. But they don't have 51% of the world's lithium reserves. It's just that they're extracting it very quickly
right now.
Where the reserves really are what we call the ABC countries: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile. Those are the three countries that have huge reserves, but that lithium is in the form of a brine that is down under the ground. And the way that they mine this is they pump that water up into these great large lagoons.
Yeah, just like with copper.
All right. And they let it dry, usually for 12 to 18 months. It's sitting here in these big lagoons. And then they get people by hand to extract this salt and load it in. Well, it uses huge amounts of water. In fact, in some regions in Argentina, 65% of all the water used in those regions is in lithium mining. It takes, let's see, I wrote this down here. Let's see. 2.2 million liters of water to get 1 ton of lithium. When you mine it
really bad.
Okay, yeah, it is. It is.
And it's really bad for everything and everybody involved.
It's worse than that. Yeah, I mean,
it's just almost hideous.
All right, so it's an extraction economy once again, and you get things like military coups in Bolivia, because like all these extraction economies, we saw the same thing in the oil fields in the Middle East back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 2010s. Yeah, of our government and other governments trying to undermine locally elected officials for control of their natural resources. And the people of those nations very rarely benefit.
Well, and I was going to say, and ABC countries are pretty far away, and they're not white people, and they don't really speak English. So, why do we seem?
But we
don't care.
They've got good soccer teams, that's for sure.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
So, anyway, at least Argentina does, and so that's one of the issues. There's a lot of environmental issues. There's also human rights issues, as we've sort of
That's what I said. It ticks off every box.
Right.
It's really awful.
So those are some of those issues, and some of the battery technologies out there still utilize cobalt. Cobalt is mined in Africa primarily with child labor. It's a horrible thing. Then you get all of this resource that's then moved to China, because China has, even though 51% of the lithium is mined in Australia, the majority of it is shipped to China to be processed.
Yeah.
And there have been
a global economy.
Well, there have been a lot of issues around the Uyghur district in China because of the Uyghur district. It's a forced labor. It's a minority within China, and there have been issues around forced labor there. So basically, we've been heading down this path of transitioning to lithium, and the environmental cost, the social cost is mounting up, and it is hidden largely from view from the American consumer. All right, all of this has been going on as the price of lithium gets lower and lower and lower. In fact, in 2010, the price of a lithium battery was around $1,200 per kilowatt hour. Okay, that's just the way you measure energy content. 2020, it had dropped down to about $130 per kilowatt hour. So about 88% drop in cost. 2023, we're looking at under $100 wholesale cost per kilowatt hour. So it's becoming very, very affordable. So of course it gets incorporated into more and more and more things. And the big one, as you mentioned, right? Electric vehicles.
All right. So, but here's the deal. Whenever you start talking to me about the price going down in a capitalist society,
what is the true cost?
No, it's not just the true cost. I wasn't going to bring that up. I've already brought it up. I'm always wanting to know that, but it's also, all right, here comes the army of corporations buying up places that they're going to speculate and say, hey, there might be lithium there, or there is lithium there. And the same rules are going to apply as in the ABC countries where they use poor labor practices. It's an extraction economy recreated in the US then.
And you get paragons of social virtue like Elon Musk saying, if I want to overthrow a country, that's my right.
What's that mean? He's a paragon of social issue.
I was social virtue. I was being facetious.
I was going to say, right. So, but what we're seeing, Elon Musk does not go together.
What we are seeing, is in the U.S. They're anticipating a 6-fold increase in demand for lithium over the next 7 years by 2030. So right now we have issues, and those issues are only going to become greater and greater and growing at an exponential rate.
But you're talking about we, meaning people who are in the industry of creating these products
just society.
That were used. Okay.
Society in general.
Okay, society in general.
Yeah. And of course, society is
more in my direction.
Not really. No, society is going to greatly benefit from this, right? Because we're seeing electric vehicles. That's saving a lot of issues, but there are still problems associated with it. So I would say these problems exist. Let's be adult. Let's acknowledge these problems, and let's figure out how we can deal with these problems.
Well, could we appoint you the mediator for all contracts then?
No, I'm.
What's the
community? I'm unqualified because I have empathy. Right.
Well, that's true, but we're looking. So basically, what we would like to see, those of us who are people who worry about these things and the true cost, is some kind of real community benefit from these corporations that are going to come into these places and set up shop for extraction.
Right. And there will be good players and there will be bad players. We just know that, right? That happens in every situation. But we can anticipate that the price is going to continue to fall. There's a thing within this industry, within the electric vehicle industry, within the lithium battery industry. They call it Wright's law, like the Wright brothers.
WRIGHT.
Yeah, like the Wright brothers. And they basically say that the price will fall 28% every time production doubles. And we're seeing production doubling and doubling and doubling on top of itself. So we would anticipate that the price will continue to drop and drop pretty rapidly. Now, what this means to the electric vehicle market is going to be pretty dramatic. And I want to highlight that. But before I do, let me remind everybody you are listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio, reminding you it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
Thank God.
Thank God. And so, everything old is new again. And so what we're finding is that as we move from one technology to another, we are going to create a whole new set of problems. And so what are we dealing with it? But I was going to mention about the drop in electric vehicle prices. I found an interesting article where they were talking about in 2019, the price of a comparable gasoline engine vehicle, I think they were using the Toyota Camry or something like that, $24,000, right? Base cost. An electric vehicle with a 350-mile range equivalent was about $50,000. Okay, you fast forward 2 years, 2021, that same gas vehicle, $25,000. The EV is now $39,000, dropped $11,000. 2023, this year, $26,000 for the gas vehicle, $26,000 for the electric vehicle with a 350 mile range.
That's where we need to be.
2025, $26,000 for the gas vehicle, $18,000.
Oh, let's go there.
For the electric vehicle. Because the price of lithium batteries within electric vehicle really represents about, I think it's about 30% of the cost of that vehicle. So if the battery keeps coming down in price, the vehicle keeps coming down in price. Right. And when you put on top of that the fact that by 2030, industry projects about 60% of all new cars will be electric vehicles that are being sold in this country. And they're all right now going to be operating on lithium.
Well, so let's just talk a minute about pricing though, because the reality is that it will drive the market because it's going to be cheaper. And but people don't trust it. So I think the other part that we're looking at is expansion of how far that vehicle will go on that battery charge, and also the issue of battery charging stations. And that's going to drive a market as well.
Yeah, those are problems. Those are other problems to deal with. The range anxiety problem is being addressed. When you say a 350-mile vehicle, that's comparable to a full tank of gas. You know,
yeah,
that's
well, most
pretty
people
good.
Don't drive that far at one time,
Right.
like you say, and then they're going to recharge at home. But anyway, I do think that there's going to be sort of a head-on collision, if you will, the analogy of that, because of those other issues. And I think if the price comes down too quickly, then there'll be a problem.
Well, there's already clearly a problem. And it has been the Wild West of lithium extraction.
Right.
Everybody running off, trying to exploit this resource as it's becoming this global multi-billion-dollar industry. So I think we've done pretty well to this point outlining the downside. Right. Aside from there are other issues, technological issues with lithium batteries. They do have what's referred to as thermal runaway, where if they're damaged in some way, they can essentially go into they explode. You know, they don't explode.
Thermal runaway.
They catch on fire.
That's a nice way of
it's a fire. It's an internal reinforcing loop, where when one cell gets out of balance, then it begins to accelerate the others, and you get
everybody
the buildup
gets excited.
Of heat.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and that's a problem, but it requires some pretty substantial physical damage. But automobiles,
get crashed into.
Sure, but gasoline tanks explode. You know, everything like that.
But are these more likely to explode than a gasoline tank?
I would hesitate to say that is the case, but it can happen. Yeah. You also have very high electrical charges within these systems. So first responders, when they come to the scene, they've got to make sure they don't cut the wrong wire and suddenly, you know, they're electrocuted. So there's a whole series of training, maintenance, infrastructure issues. You're talking about charging stations, things like that. All of these things need to be developed, but they will be developed in time. Right.
And we have talked about that on other shows. Really, it's going to transform how we travel and where we travel and
how we charge things. And
that's all part of it. It's just going to bring a huge change to a sector of our society.
Okay, so let's jump into what are some of the alternatives that are out there, because lithium, in a lot of the research that I read, most people look at lithium as a bridge technology, saying, okay, it's going to take us from the automobile, the internal combustion engine, to the electric vehicle, but probably won't be the forever technology. You know, it's going to last how long it lasts, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Nobody knows, but it is a bridge technology to the next big thing. So what is the next big thing? Well, that's anybody's guess, but there are some candidates that are out there. There are other solutions like solid state batteries, basically batteries that are like an electronic component So then you don't have the issue of these things exploding. They're much more solid. They're much more robust. There are some other graphene batteries that are an option.
What's graphene?
Graphene is just another mineral, but it's super strong, super robust. It charges very, very quickly.
Is it plentiful, and
you can extract
it without killing everybody?
Well, it'll create its own set of problems, no doubt, but it is an alternative. The one that alkaline batteries, you're familiar, the ever-ready alkalines,
that's right, the little
but
suckers.
They have the rechargeable, and it's another technology that's available. But the one that gets my interest is saltwater batteries, and saltwater batteries basically use seawater. That is the primary salt that is used, sodium chloride. It has
to be extracted though from the water.
Oh yeah, from seawater. But and it is a technology that is viable today. The problem is it's very heavy, and it tends to be more expensive than, of course, lithium
batteries. It always starts out that way. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
When they extract the salt from the water, is the water useful to life? Like it could be used for drinking or watering?
Oh, sure. Yeah, desalination plant of sorts.
Well, I didn't know it was the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're really talking about seawater. Now, if we get to a certain stage where so much of the world is running off of sea salt, are we going to then desalinize the oceans?
Well, where's all that going?
Well, I think that's certainly a long way off, but that's when you start to get to absurd scales that it does create other problems. There are some technologies you can imagine where it would be quite useful. Imagine like a cruise ship that's in the water already and extracting salts from the water to create its own power source. Something like that is perhaps quite interesting. But currently, the saltwater technology that's part of what they refer to as flow batteries are really focused on stationary battery systems.
What's that mean?
Yeah, it basically, if you think about a lithium battery in your phone or in your car, that's not sitting still, because what that requires is something compact and lightweight. These saltwater batteries are big.
They're not
bulky.
Going anywhere. They're going to sit where they're at.
But a big part of where these batteries are being used is in the utility grid. We're looking at, once we transfer a lot of our energy generation to renewable systems, then you need to have some way to store that energy, because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, but it does provide over time plenty of energy if you can store it for those periods of time when it's not available currently. So battery technology, of course, is a very good technology. And saltwater flow batteries, the nice thing about something like that, a flow battery like that, is you can increase the capacity of this system just by increasing the tanks of the cathode and the anode, which is saltwater based. So you want to.
What do those two things mean?
It's battery jargon. Every battery has two parts where they're transferring the electrons between them. One usually referred to as the cathode, the other the anode. So anyway, if you want to, let's say you want to power a house, you might have a tank that's, I'll just throw out 3 gallons each. I want to power a campus, maybe it's 1,000-gallon tanks. If I want to power a city, 1,000,000-gallon tanks, and everything else is pretty much the same. So it's entirely scalable. It's just that the capacity can be increased by increasing the size of these tanks. But that's not something you can throw in the back of your Prius. I mean, this is not mobile technology. So at least at the moment, we're probably looking at something where there are partial solutions for different applications.
Before we run out of time, I'd love you to talk about the Salton Sea project.
Oh, the Salton Sea.
Because that's interesting from a lot of angles.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about a lot of the extraction issues around lithium. So let's assume that we're going to have lithium for a good long while. Well, the Salton Sea is an area that's east of San Diego in Southern California, a big old trapped body of water.
In fact, you can see it if you do Google Earth or any map. You can see what used to be a really incredible lake.
Well, and apparently this area, I've never been there, but it's pretty much an ecological disaster as it is. It was formed in the early 1900s when the Colorado River overflowed its banks, and it formed this great, huge lake. But this lake was not something that had fresh water replenishing it. So it became more and more salty, more and more salty. And then, of course, all the agricultural runoff and all this other stuff. But then under the Salton Sea is a huge geothermal reserve. And so it's like got all the little mud pots and geysers and things that you see in
like Yellowstone.
Yellowstone, yeah. So what they've been doing is they've been building some geothermal power plants down in this region, and they pump 600-degree water, brine, it's saltwater type stuff, up out of the earth for up about a mile. And then they use that heat exchange process to generate electricity. And then they've been pumping that water back down a mile down into the earth. So it is a relatively environmentally benign way to generate electricity. But they found recently that saltwater brine is lithium, and they can extract huge amounts of lithium out of this at the same time as they're generating electricity. So they've got this environmentally sensitive, in quotes, of course. I'm sure it's not as good as the PR announcements say, but they're basically pumping this stuff out of the ground, extracting the lithium, and then pumping what's left back down into the ground. And it's a closed loop system. They're claiming this is like the Saudi Arabia of lithium, that this particular resource could meet all of the United States demands for lithium, plus about 40% of the world's lithium needs. So if this works,
cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
And my good buddy Warren Buffett,
he's the guy.
He owns about 10 out of these 11 power plants there in the Salton Sea. So they're really looking at this as, the next big gold rush, the next big Saudi Arabia oil strike thing. And if it does work out, then many of those extraction issues are going to be mitigated to a point. Other countries, other things will misbehave, but to a point, we'll see. And so it's, to my way of thinking, it's hopeful, but let's acknowledge the problem. Let's put our big boy pants on, right? And let's acknowledge these issues, whatever, and let's deal with them. Speaking of dealing with them, you've been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke, coming to you from Studio B, WOUB Radio in Athens, Ohio. We want to thank our Salton Sea of producers, Adam Rich. And we want to thank you for spending just a little bit of time with us. And as your grandmother hopefully told you, the secret to a happy and successful life is
sustainable life anyway, is play nice with others, clean up your own mess, and eat your vegetables. Boy, that's the powerful one.
There you go. Till next time. Bye-bye.